We all saw the movie. Leonardo DiCaprio portrayed Jordan Belfort in a luxurious and debaucherous lifestyle that could have only existed on Wall Street in the 1980s. He drove expensive cars, he purchased massive estates, and he lived as lavishly and devilishly as you could dream. And he got there by committing
securities fraud.
But how did he swindle his way to the top? How did he fool thousands of clients, his friends, his family, even the SEC and the FBI in order to create a $500 million company that was really just a boiler room with decent marketing? He was able to do so because he is a world-class salesman. In the 80s and 90s, Belfort's sales tactics were dishonest but airtight. After he was convicted of securities fraud and money laundering, he went to prison for 2 years and he wrote his first of 2 memoirs. Somewhere after that point, he decided to clean up his act and focus on training salespeople to use the same tactics that he utilized to become the infamous Wolf of Wall Street. Hey guys, it's Ross, and today we're going to be discussing Jordan Belfort's book, Way of the Wolf. I've got my copy here. I'm going to tell you what the book's about. I'll tell you my biggest takeaways from the book, and then we're going to see if this is a book that could help get you where you want to be. If you find this video helpful, please give it a like and subscribe. Way of the Wolf was first published in 2017, a few years after the wave of hype from Martin Scorsese's 2013 film, The Wolf of Wall Street. That movie is based on Belfort's 2007 memoir of the same name. Way of the Wolf, listed as Business and Economics, is a summary of Belfort's sales method, which he has called the straight line system. Belfort has toured the country for years, teaching seminars and performing sales consultations, all focused on teaching people to utilize the straight line system. By the end of this video, you'll have an understanding of those methods. Who's Jordan Belfort? If you're watching this, odds are you know who Jordan Belfort is. You're probably interested in this book because you know what he did. He's the Wolf of Wall Street. He's illustrious for his sales ability and notorious for the high-pressure ways he exercised his tactics, egging on clients to purchase shares in failing companies and enabling pump-and-dump practices. Born in New York City in 1962, he grew up in Queens, and after leaving dentistry school, Belfort tried his hand at meat and seafood sales before becoming a trainee stockbroker at L.F. Rothschild. After Black Monday in 1987, Belfort opened up his own brokerage called Stratton Oakmont, which, like I said before, was little more than a boiler room sales operation. As can be seen or read in The Wolf of Wall Street, the employees of the company were motivated to sell any client on any stock possible, all as a means of taking home their pay via high percentage commissions. So what's the Way of the Wolf? The Way of the Wolf that the book is named after can be summed up in one concept. That is Belfort's straight line system, which is a method for writing sales scripts and delivering those scripts effectively to potential clients. This book is full of interesting tidbits about how to posture yourself to make your client more excited in whatever you're selling. What if I told you that in 10 seconds I could teach you a physiological trigger to make your prospect think you're an expert in your field and are extremely enthusiastic about the product you're selling? You'd say it's not possible, but I just did it. Belfort explains his strategy of what he calls the power whisper, that method of taking a big enthusiastic sentence down into a giddy, excited whisper that implies the offer is so good you're privileged just to be let in on the secret. That's the power whisper in action. And utilizing the power whisper and other physiological cues is extremely important when you're meeting with a prospective client for the first time, which leads us to the first takeaway. First impressions are permanent. Belfort hammers home the immediacy of the first impression. The first 4 seconds are crucial. He references the findings of some scientific studies and explains that because of humankind's primitive upbringing, our fear instincts have sharpened our ability to assess a situation in a matter of seconds. Now, not only are first impressions made nearly instantaneously, but they may as well be permanent. The first impression you make to anybody is basically irreversible. Belfort cites a 2013 Harvard study that found a negative first impression will require an average of 8 subsequent positive impressions to erase the damage of the negative first impression. Now, of course, in a sales setting, you don't get 8 chances to redeem yourself, so you better make that first one count. How do you make your first impression count? Belfort says that in your first interaction with a prospect, you must convey 3 things: that you're smart, enthusiastic, and an expert in your field. People like working with experts. If you had to go to the doctor, would you rather go to a doctor with a practice that's been established for decades, or would you rather see a student fresh out of med school? Conveying expertise in your field is necessary in order for your prospect to have confidence in your abilities. How do you come off as smart? You must display quick decision-making, and you must also be clear and confident in your answers. Minimizing your hesitations in conversation will let your prospect know that you're snappy and can think on your toes. This will become easier over time as you become more familiar with your sales process. But even once you're an old expert at selling your product, you want to reassure your prospect of your savviness. How do you come off as enthusiastic? You can use physiological methods to improve your outward enthusiasm, such as having an upbeat tone of voice, ending sentences in an upward inflection, and by projecting positivity. Chest up, shoulders back, you know the drill. Belfort says that true enthusiasm isn't a worry when you're selling something that you're genuinely excited about. If you truly believe that you're selling a great product, it would be no problem for you to project enthusiasm for it because you truly feel it. Lastly, how do you come off as an expert in your field? Belfort recommends explaining to the prospect how the features of your product or service will translate into benefits for them. That's all your client is interested in anyways, how they can benefit. He likes to use industry jargon in front of the prospect and subsequently break it down for them, not only to explain the meaning of the words, but to build rapport between you and the prospect. Lastly, he recommends talking broadly about the industry in which you're selling and explaining how competing products may be inferior for the prospect's needs. This demonstrates that you're up to date in your industry's goings-on and that you're an authority on your product's capabilities. Now, to have lasting success with this component, you need to actually become an expert in your field, and Belfort suggests that you study your product as hard as possible until that's actually the case. He insists that there's no substitute for the hard work of becoming the foremost authority on your product. He says that when he is tasked with selling a new product, one of his first measures is to go boots on the ground to learn everything he can about the user experience. For first impressions, think about the way this YouTube video works. If you didn't like me, whether it's my face, the way I talk, the way this video looks, you wouldn't have watched this far. You would have clicked away within the first minute, if not within the first few seconds. You definitely wouldn't have jammed that like button. First impressions are everything. Okay, so we made a great first impression, and the prospect thinks that we're a smart, enthusiastic expert. How do we get to selling? That's takeaway number 2. The 3 10s. You're watching this video because you want to know how to sell, right? You want to be able to use the power of persuasion to get your customers to feel confident that purchasing your product is the best thing they can do. Belfort says that every sale is the same. Whether you're selling candy or Cadillacs, he explains that sales are only closed when the customer has absolute certainty on what he calls the 3 10s. The 3 10s are 3 points of criteria that he measures on a scale from 0 to 10. If your customer has absolute certainty about the 3 10s, then literally anybody could close them. The 3 10s are your product, you, and your company. On a scale of 0 to 10, your client must be at a 10, meaning they have absolute confidence in the product you are selling. If they think the product is useless or a waste of their money, you could have Jordan Belfort running the sale and he wouldn't be able to close because the client doesn't have enough interest in the product. Secondly, your client must be at a 10 about you, or more specifically, your knowledge and expertise. Belfort explicitly states that your customer must have absolute confidence that you are an enthusiastic expert in your field who knows everything about your product. Any questions the customer has about the product, they know they can ask you and receive an informative answer. They feel like you are on their side to shepherd them through the entire purchasing process. The last 10 is your company. If your prospect loves the product and thinks you're amazing but hates your company, they'll seek out a competitor. If you're selling office supplies to an office manager, but that manager had a bad customer service experience with your company in the past, they'll find their paper and staples somewhere else. If you're selling beauty products to a salon, but they don't think your products are ethically tested, they'll find a competing product that more closely aligns with their morals. Belfort insists that the entire sales loop from start to finish is all about ensuring that these 3 points of criteria are at a 10. Every sentence you speak should be focused on reminding your prospect of one of those 3 10s. In so many words, you should be saying, hey, this product is perfect for you. Or, hey, look how knowledgeable I am about this product and how it can serve your needs. Or, my company will be the best support you need to ensure this is the best decision you could ever make. You're not literally going to say those sentences, but you want those to be the underlying message of everything you have to say. Once you have the 3 10s, the sale's closed. If you don't have 3 10s, you'll hear a no. That's an objection. Belfort explains that in his sales system, a no isn't actually a no, but it's a misdirection. What the no really means is that the prospect isn't yet feeling the 3 10s. You haven't yet achieved their confidence in the product, yourself, and your company. I was walking down the street in the city a few months ago, and this guy walks up to me and he pulls some brand new factory sealed boxes of Colgate toothpaste out of his backpack. He asked me if I was interested in buying some toothpaste from him. I tell him, no, I'm sorry, man, I'm not interested. But why wasn't I interested? Colgate's my brand. He was holding a brand new box of the toothpaste I had used to brush my teeth that morning. So I knew I trusted the product. That's a 10. The thing was, I barely knew this guy. He's walking down the street with a backpack full of dental hygiene products. He told me his name was Troy. So I'm at a 0 with Troy, and his company, well, he had no company. There's no backing behind Troy, no one for me to seek out if I had a problem with the toothpaste. So that's another 0. But if Troy worked in the Walgreens we were standing outside of, I could have gone inside and asked him for his recommendation on some toothpaste. He would have said, right here we have the most perfect Colgate toothpaste, and I would have said, amazing. That's a good product I'm familiar with. That's a 10. This guy is here in his Walgreens uniform and he was able to answer my question and point me to the right toothpaste. That's another 10. And there's a Walgreens on every corner, so I know they're big enough to support me if I run into a problem with my purchase. That's the last 10. And that's the sale made. I'm buying that toothpaste, not Troy's toothpaste. This is Belfort's explanation of how objections really work in his system. Troy hadn't properly won over my confidence for him or his lack of a company, so I said no to buying a product from him that I've happily purchased dozens of times before. Again, Belfort says that objections are really just smokescreens for uncertainty. I wasn't feeling 310s, so Troy got a no. The Colgate didn't get a no, Troy got a no. When you get a no, it's time to loop. Belfort explains that means it's time to go back to the start of the sales process and focus your language around tightening up the 310s. You need to really figure out which 10 you're missing, whether the client isn't crazy about your product, yourself, or your company, and do what you can to reassert your ability to satisfy their needs. Remember, you're looking to max out all 310s. Once that's done, they're closed. All right, we're smart, enthusiastic experts, and now we understand that the sales loop is all about ensuring the prospect has complete confidence in our product, us, and our company. If you max out all 310s, the sale is closed. What could be left in the book? That's the third takeaway. Qualify your leads. That is, you need to qualify your sales leads before you waste your time or their time. I get a lot of cold calls at work, and usually they just annoy me. I'm trying to get my work done, and here's somebody trying to sell me on a lead generation service we don't want, or somebody trying to get us to sign up for Angie's List. If I wanted to be on Angie's List, I would be on Angie's List. To those sales callers that annoy me, I'm simply an unqualified buyer. I'm annoyed because they're taking up my time trying to sell me something I don't want. They could be selling me the key to immortality, and I'm going to zero out on their 310s because I don't like the interruption they've caused. They're wasting my time and I'm wasting theirs. That's time they could be using making a sale to a qualified buyer. Belfort says you can close anyone who is closable. In the scenario of me rejecting a cold caller, I'm not closable. Jordan Belfort himself could be on the other end of the phone, but if he's trying to sell me something I don't want and he's annoyed me while trying to do it, then I'm 1,000% unclosable. I'm not receptive at all to his pitch. I'm not listening to what he's saying. I'm waiting for him to take a breath so I can say thanks but no thanks and hang up the phone. This is why it's so important that you don't make a full-blown sales presentation to somebody not in the market. Just because someone's polite and listens to your whole spiel doesn't mean that they're in the market for your product. If they're too nice to say no, it just means that you wasted everyone's time. With this in mind, you need to do some prospecting to ensure your client has a need for your product before you launch into the full-blown pitch. That's what qualifying is. You need 2 or 3 questions you can ask them so they can speak a bit and build a rapport with you before you go and try to sell them something they may not need. Find out if they use the products you're selling. See if they're satisfied with their current solution. If you're selling a product they're unfamiliar with, ask about their needs and see if you can fulfill them. Don't subject them to a pitch for something in which they have zero interest, because you'll just end up wasting their time and yours. That's time you could be spending to make pitches to qualified leads. Okay, the book has some good lessons, but who is it for? I'm going to read an excerpt from the prologue that explains who Belfort thinks the book is for. Selling is everything in life. You're selling people that your ideas make sense, your concepts make sense, your products make sense. You could be a parent selling your kids on the importance of taking a bath or doing their homework. You could be a teacher selling your students on the value of education, a lawyer selling a jury on the innocence of your client. In short, selling applies to all people and all aspects of life, both business and personal. After all, at some point in our lives, we'll all have to sell ourselves to someone: a prospective partner, a future employer, a future employee, a future first date, and on and on. Of course, the author thinks this book is for everybody under the sun, but is it really? Probably not. There are those who would be turned off by the sales nature of the book, but really I can't think of any working person who would be hurt by reading this book. Nor can I think of anyone for whom reading this book would be a true waste of time. A lot of the generic sales advice in this book is comprised of nifty physiological tricks like mood mirroring, tonality, and body language. These tricks can be applied in nearly any social interaction to help you gain some control. You can use these tricks to make your nasty coworker like you a little bit more, or even to turn a bad first date into a good one. It goes without saying, if you have to make sales calls or cold calls for work, this book is 100% required reading. If you work in any other sales position or manage sales at your business, it's absolutely worth your time and should be the next thing on your list. If you work in another position at a company, I would still recommend this book because it would help you with your interpersonal skills. Though maybe a different book, such as the classic How to Win Friends and Influence People, would be better preliminary reading. Whether or not you're in sales, if you have a job, you still have to interact with people in person, over the phone, or via email. Whether they're clients or coworkers, and tools explained in this book, such as mood matching, are effective methods of getting other people to like you and listen to your ideas. Overall, it's a good book for learning about how to improve your messaging. All right, so Belfort says the book is for everybody, and I say the book is excellent for professionals or those looking to improve their interpersonal skills. What's not so great about it? Cons! One of my biggest gripes with the book is the fact that it's very heavily geared towards cold calling, obviously. The methods are adaptable for businesses with other sales methods, but it's always got its foot in that cold calling camp. A major point that Belfort harps on is the fact that your sales script and your delivery of that script is the only deciding factor on whether your sale will close or not. The book is very focused on the sort of straightforward salesperson career that he lived and became famous for teaching people to succeed at. There's nothing wrong with this, but it doesn't apply to every sales environment. He's right. The same principles apply to selling your kid on bedtime, selling your boss on giving you a raise, or selling a client on a $100,000 deal, but that is merely the framework. It is somewhat up to the reader to adapt Belfort's principles to their specific career path. I mean, for a book, it's the best, most broad way he could teach his methods, so it makes sense. If you want more detailed, industry-specific sales advice from the Wolf of Wall Street, you're going to have to hire him for a consultation rather than buying his $13 book. But as I was reading through the book, my natural response, as yours will be, was to adapt the methods to the work I was doing at the time. Belfort's sales principles work for my career uses in a broader, more general sense than the exact word-for-word granularity he offers readers of the book. I'm a contractor. My sales process is such that I meet with a potential client, and that person usually has a need. They're already a fairly qualified client, because people don't go seeking out conversation with contractors unless they need their services. After an initial consultation for me to learn about their needs, I have to develop pricing to quote them how much the project is expected to cost. After I develop my pricing, I present it to the client, and I have to show them how we've determined the most effective way for the project to be completed on the most reasonable budget. Overall, it seems like Belfort's lessons would be pretty turnkey for me. Belfort's scripts and cold calling based advice start losing effectiveness for my uses when we take into consideration that on a large-scale project, my initial consultation of the potential client's needs can consist of several site walkthroughs, dozens of emails back and forth with the client and architect, not to mention our internal communication and correspondence with our suppliers. Though he offers a small chapter of information to adapt the straight line method to a company that circles back multiple times to a lead, it starts feeling a bit like David versus Goliath when you're getting together a proposal for a 6 or 7 figure project. The book's advice feels much more focused on a product-based sales process rather than a service-based sales process. Belfort's line-for-line scripts that he offers in Way of the Wolf don't apply in the scenario of my sales process. But again, even though I can't use his word-for-word scripts to help my closing rate, I can and have implemented his principles. I can loop conversations back to the top in an effort to approach the sale from another angle. I can keep non-sale, in this case non-project, based conversation to the bare minimum. I need to keep my client absolutely positive of my 3 10s. Like I said, Belfort spends a chapter talking about adapting his methods for other sales types, though I wish this section was more fleshed out. He talks about sales scenarios where you make contact with the client 4 or more times and how he would approach those and adapt his methods, but to me this was still lacking. As a result, I found this book, for me specifically, to be less of a paint-by-numbers guide on how to make a sale than it is a collection of very helpful tips and anecdotes. Another interesting quirk of the book is that at many points, Belfort seems to be overcompensating for his checkered past. He asserts you should never sell a product you're not confident in, never sell for a company you're not confident in, and never sell someone on something that you know is a bad fit for them. Whether or not Belfort is genuinely apologetic for his history of high-pressure sales tactics is impossible to know for sure, but it's respectable that he's hammering home this advice in a day and age where commission-based selling is just as prominent as it was during Stratton Oakmont's heyday. So what's my take? I've read this book twice, both times over the course of 2 days. It's a quick read that is written in a very conversational tone. As a matter of fact, the tone is so conversational that when I checked out some clips of the audiobook recording, I realized how much Belfort's narration really suits the content. The book itself is more like reading a long-form transcription of a Belfort presentation rather than your typical business book. Personally, I prefer a paper copy rather than an audiobook because I like to be able to take it off the shelf and leaf through it for quick reference in the future. This is one book, though, that I could see people enjoying the audiobook version just as much, if not more, than the print edition. This is when you realize that the whole book is just a sales pitch straight from Belfort. He's sold you on the straight line system. As a matter of fact, the prologue of this book is the first part of the straight line. Belfort's got you held captive through the entire book, and the duration of it is him pitching the system to you. In the prologue, he introduces the straight line as a method of making sales that is so effective, it's nearly a foregone conclusion that you are going to have a 100% close rate. He makes it sound like that by purchasing this book, you've been handed the keys to a deadly weapon made to guarantee sales success. He says that the straight line system will be able to sell anyone on nearly anything, even to the point of their detriment. He literally calls it the safecracker's guide to the human mind. Is it that good? It's good, but it's really up to your implementation of the system and your enthusiasm in your client-facing encounters that will be the true determining factors. Again, the big takeaways are: first impressions are permanent, the 3 10s, which are your product, you, and your company, and third, qualify your leads. If you've internalized these lessons from this video, you're better off than you were a few minutes ago. If you like this video, please click the like button and subscribe. If you would like to purchase Way of the Wolf, you can do so through the link in the video description. If you want to talk about the lessons in the book, or just about the book in general, or if you want to ask me any questions about it, please leave a comment below. And until next time, thanks for watching.